Hey everyone, welcome to our DevOps office hours. It is May 3rd, 2023. I am Eric Osterman and I'll be your host today. Cloud Posse is a DevOps accelerator. We help teams conquer AWS using our rock solid Terraform blueprints. Whether you're starting from scratch or just not happy with your current setup, book a session with me. Just go to cloudposse.com/quiz and answer a few quick questions. You'll be shown exactly our process and can see kind of behind the scenes of what it is that we do at Cloud Posse. For those of you new to the call, don't worry, our format's very informal. My goal is to get your questions answered. If you're curious about Cloud Posse or any of our open source tools and modules, it's a great place to ask. For those of us joining through the podcast or YouTube channel, we host these calls every week, so don't miss out. Register by going to cloudposse.com/officehours. Again, cloudposse.com/officehours. Our call today is recorded. We'll be posting a recording of this session to our YouTube channel. So if you want to support and help what we do over here, please hit those like and subscribe buttons. It helps us out a great deal. Just go to youtube.com/cloudposse. Again, youtube.com/cloudposse. It's also a great way to share the videos with your team if you want to keep everyone on the same page. Lots of great announcements every week here that benefit everyone. So here are my announcements for this week. If you have any that aren't on my list, please share them in the Zoom chat or the sweetops Slack channel, and we'll announce them on the call today. All right, the first one is an interesting tool. It was on the set of awesome Terraform tools called TPM. It is a package manager for Terraform providers. And you might ask why you would want to do that. Well, if you are relying on Terraform and Terraform init, it's a pretty slow process, and maybe you want to cache those across all of your root modules or components. This is a tool that can do that. Haven't looked into it further, but I like the idea of it and what it's providing. It's a small little Go utility, and let's see here. It is providing binary releases to make it easy to get off the ground. Is anyone already practicing something similar, caching your providers for Terraform?
I have on my local station, I do have some scripts that do this, but nothing like a reusable tool.
Yeah.
I have a slower download than most people. I'm over Starlink, so sometimes I find it really annoying. So I do have some repositories where there are multiple copies of the same providers, and I've kind of hacked around that a little bit with some local scripts. But I'd love to use something like this just because, you know, pulling an extra 500 megs here and there with certain projects is just annoying.
Actually, in your case, it brings back memories of a blast from the past. I mean, going back to Squid as a transparent proxy or a pass-through proxy of some kind. Have you considered that? That might be a good
yes. So not only that, also using skips.
Skips. What skips?
Even though it isn't needed, you combining skips with a data dictionary approach and a local cache of the same files that are pushed. But I just ended up with having a cache of those providers, of those versions of those providers in a directory above, and then just populating them. That way I wasn't even pulling things over the local network.
Yeah.
That's it, you know, but there's better ways to do it, I'm sure. But yes, this kind of stuff is valuable.
That doesn't ring a bell.
Skips is satellite. There's a lot of satellite hacks for TCP. So now for spacelift, or rather for Starlink, you don't need it. But there are a lot of protocols to work with unusual circumstances. With TCP works very poorly across the solar system, and so Skips is one of those protocols that does a number of different funky things with your TCP protocols to fake the windowing of your sessions in order to deal with what they call big, fat, long pipes, where you might have a 10 meg, 20 meg, 100 meg bandwidth capacity, but the latency between messages is high, and TCP performs poorly under those circumstances. So skips is one of several protocols that allow you to overcome those problems.
All right, I did not know anything about that. Let's see here. Another announcement was a small one. This one was from Weekly TF, I believe, or Awesome Terraform. I forget. I think it was in both. It's a enhancement on top of the existing REPL kind of built into the Terraform client, and add some improvements that they document here. So you can, I guess, interactively like work with the history. Good for debugging and learning Terraform. Next announcement is a one from Cloud Posse. Sadly, one of our most popular repos is this Bastion. It went it had not been maintained for many years. Thanks to Jonathan, who has dusted it off, updated all the patches. We now have full integration tests for it and can accept pull requests. So I'd expect it to stay maintained. It's still a popular repository nonetheless. So if you depend on it, check it out. I guess background, what is the Bastion? It is a Docker image that is optimized for interactive SSH sessions. Makes it easy to debug and triage, for example, an ECS cluster or a Kubernetes cluster. You can deploy this Bastion SSH into it remotely and administer things that way. One thing I haven't tried doing, but it'd be kind of interesting, is if you did a multi-stage Docker build and combined Cloud Posse's geodesic with the Bastion, now you have this ultimate toolbox with SSH capability that you can remotely access. So geodesic is our DevOps toolbox with all the common tools, and it has our GitHub Cloud Posse package repository in there where we ship all the most common packages that we find useful in our day-to-day related to DevOps. So this is kind of our tool chain. All right, next up, we previously discussed on office hours that Terraform AWS v5 provider is on its way out. It's interesting, every time I refresh this page, the percentage is changing and moving. So there's definitely progress. Yesterday it was 25%. Before office hours, it was 28%. And now during office hours, it's 29%. So this is good and bad. I'm really not excited about having to update all of our modules for it, but it's a necessary evil, I guess, or necessary good. All right. Anyone have anything else to add to the V5 provider for Terraform? All right. Here's, this is not a new announcement. It is new for me. I didn't realize that AWS Compute Optimizer supports advising you on right-sizing ECS workloads on Fargate. So if you weren't aware of that, and this is a problem you might have or be curious about, check it out. Has anyone used EC2 AWS Compute Optimizer for ECS? Curious what your experience has been. All right.
It's pretty much like CloudWatch metrics and, hey, you should make this smaller and you'll save this many dollars. It's genuinely a helpful tool, but don't. But yeah, it's good.
Yeah, well, better than nothing. There are lots of these right-sizing tools for Kubernetes, which is why I was excited to see this one for ECS by AWS. It doesn't seem to support right-sizing for EKS, though. Is that right?
I honestly don't know.
Let's see. Does not appear to.
It works, but it works on the EC2 level. So in theory, it should tell you like what you need to do from an overall compute perspective, right?
Possibly, but I mean, on a compute perspective, especially on EKS, and if you're using Carpenter, that part is already taken care of for you. Now it's about right-sizing your resource limits and requests on the pods
It
themselves.
doesn't support Kubernetes.
Yeah.
Well, something to look forward to reInvent 2023. Maybe. All right. Next announcement is if you've been feeling some pain in Terraform this past month, possibly by our module, sorry, and possibly by your own, it is because AWS has rolled out now officially a couple of best practices that were announced earlier, but now it's rolled out across the board. So those two are enabling S3 blocks on public access and disabling S3 access control lists for all new S3 buckets. It's that latter one that I think has been biting us, is that our module, which is included everywhere else, is enabling those access lists, which are, I believe, deprecated or not working anymore. Is that right, Matt? Yeah.
Yep. They're basically like, they basically don't allow you to use ACLs on new buckets.
Yeah.
Well, that they are disabled by default on new buckets.
Yeah.
You can still use them, but you have to change the bucket ownership first. And that's where we're getting tripped up.
Oh, well, I didn't understand that. Changing the bucket ownership.
So they've added a new setting called bucket ownership, which kind of does the same thing as the old ACL bucket owner enforced, I think it was called.
Mm-hmm.
And they were recommending using that instead of ACLs in general. And so when you set the bucket ownership enforced through the bucket ownership controls, that disables all the ACLs. And that's the new default configuration. You can set the bucket ownership to bucket owner preferred, and then ACLs will be re-enabled.
Okay.
And it's still not entirely clear what the best path forward is for our log delivery module, our log module, our log S3 log storage module, because AWS says that the log delivery ACL is deprecated, but there isn't a convenient bucket policy that replaces it, because there's different configurations for different services delivering logs. There's ALB logs, there's S3 bucket access logs, there's some other logs, and they all have different bucket policies associated with it. So I am still doing some research. If anyone has on the call has input, please provide it. My inclination at this moment is to recommend that we continue to use the log delivery ACL, but just configure, but we need to update the configuration to enable ACLs before we do that.
Makes sense to me. Anyone have opinions on this, for or against? All right. Also, Jeremy, did you have, I'm almost at the end of my announcements. Was there something you wanted to talk about today? Is that what you're joining?
No, I just saw that this was on the list. I wanted to be sure I was.
Okay, cool. Thanks. All right. Next announcement is something that I also missed, to be honest, at reInvent, but is now GA. So I guess I didn't miss too much. is AWS Verified Access, which is Amazon's response finally to how to do zero trust remote access policies integrated within the whole IAM framework. So I'm curious, I haven't even had a chance to look this up. Is there any Terraform support for this? Has anyone kicked the tires on it as the preview?
I wanted to kick the tires on it yesterday or so, but I ran away when I looked at the pricing. It's again one of
Oh, shoot.
instances where AWS tells you only pay for what you use, but not really.
Yeah, a lot of people were complaining about the pricing. I haven't had time to do a deep dive on it, but a lot of people were complaining about its pricing.
Yeah, the target market is definitely not a startup like where I work. It's big companies that can afford this. It would be awesome to use it. I just wish their definition of pay for what you use is in line with most people's.
Is this saying that for every hour your application is online and fronted by this proxy, there's a 27-cent charge?
That's my understanding. If you scroll down, they have some examples.
Wow. Or is it only the number of hours that it's being used by somebody?
The documentation is not clear, but I have been burned with client VPN endpoints before, so.
Yeah.
It's the hour that is enabled and there's a per gigabyte charge. So yeah.
All right.
Look at example
Well,
one
if
down
you-
there.
If you look at the second example, they're showing you, look how much the second example is charging someone. Go to example 2.
Mhm.
It's $55,000 a month for this one.
Oh, that's a steal, man. Literally theft. Oh, wow. All right, big business. And I could not see any, when I just Googled for Terraform, I didn't, oops. When I Googled for Terraform on this, I didn't see anything.
There's an open issue. I saw it.
Hmm.
I think it is 29,689. I think that was right.
Here, yeah, 29,689.
Yeah.
So they've mapped out the required resources. PRs are forthcoming. So yeah, looks like there will be
It's
support. Yeah. What's that chat?
Well,
So,
it looks like they're still soliciting for people to work on it. So
Well, it'd be interesting to see how what was the other announcement that I've been following? Oh yeah, Lattice. That was progressing rather quickly, but then I also saw new resources constantly needing to be added. Let's see here, AWS Lattice. Oh, closed. So it looks like full support for Lattice is available now. Oh, yesterday. You heard it here first. Let's see, next announcement was an interesting write-up on the HashiCorp blog. We talked last week about the Vault secrets operator, I think it was. Historically, the sidecar method was the most common. And I didn't know about the CSI provider, which is interesting. So you can actually have a Vault file system mounted securely to a pod and access secrets that way, which makes a lot of sense. So has anyone been using or tried the CSI provider method? All right. Well, that's all my announcements. Let's see what we have in the chat. Anything there?
There are two others. So RDS got support for Graviton instances, which is nice. It's going to be allegedly faster and I think cheaper. I haven't looked into the pricing, but yay.
Yeah,
And
20% price
AWS launched a new service for notifications.
Should there be fewer architecture compatibility issues by using Graviton? Like obviously using Graviton for like Kubernetes or EC2 workloads requires you compile and run specific binaries for that. But if you're using RDS, I'm guessing that really doesn't matter so much to the end user, right?
Well, I haven't heard of any issues. AWS is in charge of testing that stuff is still
Yeah,
compatible.
there's nothing there's nothing proactive one has to do to adopt it other than launching an RDS database on Graviton then, right?
I imagine if you have some interesting stored procedures, you might be impacted. I doubt it.
Yeah.
Again, I haven't heard anything. There's a chance there are, I don't know, implementation details, but I haven't heard or seen any issues.
All right. Well, that's cool. Thanks for bringing that one up. You set up your AWS notifications in one place. I saw this. I didn't grok it immediately. Can you explain this one, Vlad?
CloudWatch notifications and other notifications like help dashboards and stuff go into one place in the AWS console, and you can set some filters and destinations on it. It's a very early service, but new service, yay.
Yeah. Cool.
I know we were all saying what we need is one more AWS service.
Exactly.
I have a lot.
So would this be a good solution? What I'm reading this as, would be instead of setting up an SQS queue or an SNS queue or an SNS topic, or I'm mixing up nomenclature here, but like instead of setting up SNS for receiving notifications, if you wanted to do your own kind of pager duty from CloudWatch, this would allow you to kind of pipe everything into one location and make that process a little bit simpler. Am I reading that correctly?
Yep, they go into one location and then they can even deliver notifications to, what was it, email, in the console, or in the mobile app. Like AWS console has a mobile app, remember?
Yeah. The one that has sat on my phone and untouched for years.
Yeah, I've uninstalled it. But yeah, it seems like it helps with that.
That actually seems legitimate, because I think the whole, hey, pipe things to SQS or SNS, because I feel like there's been two pieces there, and that piping has never been clear. So if they did a good job of creating an API that actually feels more developer friendly, nicer to like fit with other services, then that seems legit. I could get behind that. I'd be interested to kick the tires on it. Because I've hated, I've always avoided the some of the ugly piping that AWS does between services. And this seems like if that's what this service is for, then maybe it could be a little bit nicer, and that would be great.
Yeah, it also has things like filters and grouping notifications, so you only get one email, not 100.
That's cool.
So it does give you those then custom notifications to the service. Like, for example, if we wanted to notify the console user, AWS Web Console user, of something at an application level, we couldn't trigger a notification that way, it looks like. This is only for like AWS service, these specific services, it looks like. I don't see SNS or SQS here.
Well, one thing that it definitely said was that in the launch announcement that you could send it to email, the
Mhm.
mobile app, and chat bots if you wanted to do something with it there. So I think they may be skipping SNS and use. Oh, there it is, right there. The last sentence of that paragraph that you're in.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it seems, but what, to chat and push. Okay, yeah. I was just saying, like, can I push from our custom app? Can we push a notification, a custom message?
no, at least not now. This is
Yeah.
just for AWS services. So they must be doing an overall push for better notifications, because the other thing that they announced maybe a day or two before this is that they're now going to send AWS health, like service health notifications to EventBridge. So you can also react on, any place that you're, subscribed to events on EventBridge. And before, you could only get like some like account things, like specifically about your instances or whatever, but now they're actually going to send, whatever, like the overall EC2 service is having a problem, they're going to send that notification on EventBridge too. So I think they must be having a push on more consistent alerting. They have an epic for that. That they're rolling out a bunch of things along
reliability.
these lines, so, yeah, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, but specifically about notifying when there's a problem with AWS services.
I have a slightly related question. Has anyone tried to route multiple AWS accounts to a single Slack channel using Chatbot? Is that possible? Or is it one account to a channel?
Routing what to a sync? What about those accounts?
Like the notifications, I believe you can connect.
Yeah, I think you're just saying have a single instance of AWS Chatbot that covers all of your accounts.
Correct.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer. I haven't played with it, so I don't really know the answer to that.
All right. Thanks.
What do you use the chatbot, the AWS chatbot for today?
Oh, I don't use it currently. I'm about to start using it.
That's cool. It'll be interesting to hear how it goes for you. I'd like to know more about that service.
Sure.
Looking quickly at the architecture diagram, it looks like it should be possible, because the AWS sends all the information to an SNS topic, and then Chatbot subscribes to that. So basically, as long as you can get your information into the SNS topic, it seems like you should be able to get those things there.
I didn't personally set it up, but I worked in an environment where we had all the AWS chat coming to a single Slack channel.
Yeah.
And you could open tickets from it and they would respond in the channel as well.
That's music to my ears. I guess it would have to be one shared like topic across the accounts.
I think
I know that we had it aggregated across all of our accounts, but I don't know the back end setup, unfortunately. Sorry.
Oh, I'll figure it out. Someone was gonna say something.
Oh, I think from what I saw, it looked like you could subscribe to multiple topics.
Ah, got it. Okay, perfect.
So presumably, as long as you have, iron permissions that let you do that from the chatbot, then you should be able to do that.
This is the Cloud and Not folks, and I'm pretty sure it is, where they have one that's similar to this.
Yeah, it's theirs.
Yeah, it's theirs. And they're good folks. I like Andreas. This is like one of the things they're pretty focused on, which is cool.
That's cool. Yeah, this has been around for a while, so it's nice to see it still growing.
Is it open source?
It is not.
Okay.
Cool to see it said more than
Well, there is
1,000
an open source
teams.
component, but I don't believe the whole thing is open source.
No, there's a pricing thing on their website that explains like how it's priced.
Okay. But it doesn't, what's the relationship of the open source to the product? This is just like, in this case, I guess, provisioning integrations or tie-ins basically from Marbot with Terraform.
Could be. I don't know enough about them.
It's interesting they went Terraform. They used to be really big into CloudFormation. They originally built some of the like shared CloudFormation libraries or something. I'm misremembering that and butchering it a little bit, but I know they had some open source CloudFormation stuff that they were known for.
You said Cloudnot or
Cloudnot, yeah. They're two brothers from Berlin.
I forget how you spell it.
I think it's CloudONot.
There we
They might not be on GitHub under that name. Yeah. So they have a podcast. They used to be consultants. Now that I think they're doing a lot of training. And then Marbot is one of their big focuses. We're actually doing a blog post with them on like one of our architectures that's coming out soon.
Cool. You want to talk more about that, Matt?
Oh, it was like they have a like show us your architecture thing, and we basically just talk through how we use Argo, SOPs operator, and kind of just bolt things on piecemeal after the fact, and talk about, hey, what's the division between what Argo owns and what Terraform owns. So they were excited about that, because I think that the brothers, and I've only met Andreas, they are really into a lot of the serverless stuff. They're into a bunch of ECS. I think they've worked with a number of, they have a book. They've worked with a bunch of big German companies, as far as I understand, doing consulting work, and now they're trying to get out of consulting and then moving, or not trying, but I think they've successfully gotten out of consulting, and they're moving towards content, book, Marbot, and probably some other stuff that I don't know, but good folks.
Very cool. By the way, you said something.
I think.
Go on, Matt.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, I think those are the guys that work with Bucket AV. It's like an antivirus thing for S3.
I actually
think it's the same two guys.
Recently. I have on my to-do list to convert that template to Terraform, but no one has a Bucket AV Terraform, do they? Or I might just run Clam AV in my Kubernetes cluster directly. Probably end up doing that long.
Oh, actually, there's
sorry,
I was just gonna say there's an article, right? The second article, Eric, is actually how we built Bucket AV powered by Sophos. Yeah, there you go. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Matt.
Oh no, all good. I've always hated running Clam AV and that type of thing. And I think if you're looking at that, check out AWS Inspector, because they've gotten a lot better with V2, which, by the way, and we should open source this. I'll ping my team on it soon, but we Inspector V2 Terraform is much easier than Inspector V1, and Cloud Posse's modules are out of date on that. So I'll ping somebody in my team to
Does Inspector actually do virus scan though? I did it before I deployed Bucket AV. I did a quick look at like all the AWS stuff, guard duty, all that kind of stuff, and I didn't see anything that literally did like file scanning.
I believe it does. Maybe we configure so many things that, you know, I'm not 100%. I can't speak to it as like a definitive right off the top of my head, but I would look into it. I feel like it does all your package scanning and makes sure it's like up to compliance.
I'm pretty sure I did a review, and I'm pretty sure at the time, at least this was maybe like 2-3 months ago, Bucket AV was providing something that was like pretty unique.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Bucket AV, I don't know much about, purely because I've never looked into this. Honestly, I'm just talking about Clam, because I know that is
Bucket AV wraps a bunch of SQS queues and around your S3 bucket and runs Clam on it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Got you.
Set up
Okay.
triggers and stuff like that, right?
I think it's actually Sophos that it runs on it, like under the hood.
What's that?
Sophos AV, I think, is what they actually use. Like
Bucket AV?
Yeah, pretty sure.
No, Bucket AV is Clam. I've logged into the instances myself.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely Clam. Or at least the one I deployed from the marketplace. They have a marketplace template that was running Clam, but it's kind of, for my application, it's a web app. I want something more natively integrated, which is why I was thinking I would run it on Clam AV on the cluster, and then the apps can talk to it more directly than basically scanning after the fact, after users uploaded something that could be vulnerable already, right? I want to give that feedback in the user interface, and for that, I probably need to run my own Clam server or something.
So it looks like they have two distributions. They have a Clam AV version and a Sophos version.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it looks like Sophos is the older one. My
Maybe
info is outdated. So
the Clam AV one is pretty cool. My only complaint is, like I said, for my use case, it's not as integrated into the application as it should be. It's a CYA for me on the back end, right? But I want to give that user the feedback, and I don't even want to accept their file, right? If it has a virus, actually.
yeah, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but I'm not sure that Inspector actually supports S3 content as a source, right? Yeah.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, so this is a totally. I think, and I was thinking of Clam AV from the server monitoring perspective, not the like file monitoring. And now I'm understanding what Bucket AV and all of this is.
I did a few months back, I did a comprehensive research trying to find something, and Bucket AV was like the only thing I landed on.
Pretty interesting. Because I mean, is it for your use case, are you trying to scan for malicious content because some application downstream is going to
it's because
handle that file?
Imagine
upload files, right? And other users may download that file. I don't want to facilitate the spread of virus on my platform.
Oh, I hear you.
I don't want to expose my environment to any virus that has been submitted by a user, right?
That's
So
legit.
now it goes into a bucket, and I have Bucket AV, and I get alerted, and it can auto delete, but that's not as integrated as the user getting a pop-up which says, file rejected, it has a virus. And I could do that more easily with like an application library that talks to a Clam AV running in my cluster, and it would be integrated. But I have Clam AV as a nice add-on solution that you can get up and running in a day, right?
Yeah.
One of the things I've seen a lot of people do is like services. It's extremely popular, obviously, for services to take like user profile pictures as uploads. And there's been problems where people like embed viruses like inside the actual like JPEGs or whatever that they're uploading, and then someone views someone else's profile and then they get that loaded. So this like stops that, like that kind of injection
Word
attack.
documents,
all those things. Yeah.
That's impressive to embed a virus into an image like that. Yeah.
All right. Well, continuing on to Q&A. Any other questions? today?
I have a couple.
All right, fire away.
All right, so I'm just wondering if anyone has implemented an API gateway for EKS that has integrated billing, and which one they'd recommend.
Sorry, could you ask the question one more time? I
Right, an
lost you.
API gateway for EKS that has integrated billing.
Oh, okay. Just the general category of API gateway, not Amazon's API gateway.
Right. Sorry, I should, yeah.
I think Kong has a marketplace offering that does that. You mean like integrated as in you can get it on your AWS bill?
No, not necessarily. Just a way to be able to charge people that are gonna call the API.
Oh, sorry, I misunderstood. With the functionality of being able to bill your customers, not integrated with AWS billing. I was misunderstanding the question.
Yeah.
So basically you want to track requests per like API key or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I would be shocked if anything would have it. I would bet that there's a Kong plugin for it. That would be my guess.
All right.
And there's still like a Kong operator, so you deploy that, and then Kong would be the front end of it and be able to do the metering, if so. But
would these fall under the open source part of Kong, or this would be one of those add-ons that you have to pay more for?
There's like Kong plugin hub, and there's like tons of like plugins available for it. I could look real quick and see if I can find a billing one. Let me see. Yeah, connect plans, billing, and usage. Oh, that's the wrong thing. That's not what I was looking for. I thought that was a plugin. There's definitely there's a ton of plugins for Kong. All I would say is like look there and see. I'm sure someone has it. I know they have like rate limiting, and they have like a ton of other things. And I seem to remember there was one that integrated with Stripe at some point, but don't quote me on that. But I can't find it right off the top of my head.
All right. Thanks, that's helpful.
yeah, I didn't see it scanning here, but that'd be cool.
I swear.
I didn't realize Kong had created like a marketplace on their mesh.
Yeah.
All right, next question.
All right. The second
Hello.
one. Okay, go ahead. I can ask after you.
Hello everyone. So like we have one like use case like where we are trying to reduce the NAT gateway transfer out cost. So like currently what is happening, like our application resides in our like private subnet, and there is some like application logic that sends some of the requests to external DSPs. So that we cannot avoid. So like we are incurring lot of NAT gateway out cost. So can anybody suggest any solution for it to reduce that NAT gateway out cost?
The only thing I could think of would be whatever instances are talking to those external things could have their own. They could be in public subnets and basically have their own IPs directly on the instances, but other than that, you don't have much of a choice.
There's a project that surrounds
Yeah.
this that basically runs. I have to find it. I start it so I can give me a second. here.
Depending on-
It's from Chime.
Yeah, it's called Alternate.
Yep.
So it's you were on it, Matt. But the idea is basically it'll run your traffic. It'll it'll point your route tables so that your outgoing traffic hits NAT instances, but it has a NAT gateway running in the background. And if there's any traffic failures in the NAT instances, it's running a Lambda that's kind of like constantly checking, and it will it'll swap the NAT gateway into the route table so that your outgoing traffic starts to go through the NAT gateway. It's really, quite smart, and obviously, could save a ton of money for people who have high outbound costs. But it is a little bit complicated. It's going to increase the complexity of your infrastructure, but kind of brilliant from the perspective of getting around AWS cost in NAT gateway, because everybody's been burned by that, right? Anyway, worth looking into.
One of the main contributors, or maybe the main contributor of this, is Ben Whaley, and he and I used to work together at our previous job. So that's how I knew about it.
So will it also work with like our application are running on ECS Fargate? So will it also work with that?
Yeah, it'll work for any, it doesn't matter if it's an EC2 instance. Okay. Yeah, anything that's within your private networks, at private subnets.
Okay, got it.
Cool, nice pro tip.
We just run into some of this problem ourselves, and if you have a lot of traffic that flows to either S3 or DynamoDB, hopefully just S3, which we do, you can have a gateway endpoint for Amazon S3 that'll basically avoid the NAT gateway for your S3 traffic. It has dropped a significant amount out of our cost, just adding that.
Yeah, VPC private endpoints is what it's called, and you can do it for a ton of different AWS services. Anything, pretty much anything that's
no. Those are different. And so there are two types of VPC endpoints. There are the gateway VPC endpoints, which are for S3 and Dynamo, and those are free. You don't have to pay anything.
Right.
But only for S3 and Dynamo. And then there are the other VPC endpoints, which have an hourly cost. Like, it still makes sense at scale, but if you have a tiny traffic, you're gonna pay more on that hourly cost than on the NAT gateway. But the S3
there's also a limit on the amount of endpoints. So depending on how many services you're using, you may have to prioritize. Like, I took a look at setting them up, and I was like, man, I'm quickly getting towards the limits if I just make it easy on myself and add everything.
I think that
we are using VPC endpoints for like every other service, but like this call is going like out of the internet, and like because application resides on the private subnet, so like that is a challenge in the cost. So that is incurring a huge cost for our project.
Yeah, definitely look at alternate, but I think that VPC private endpoints and the gateway endpoints always confused me. I feel like there's like some difficult nomenclature, bad documentation that they provide around the whole service, or maybe their object model is like kind of confusing, or I don't know, whatever it was, it threw me for a loop when I remember looking into it years ago. But Vlad, your simple explanation of 2 sentences, I think just clarified that for me. So thanks for that.
There's a longer project of 2 sentences explaining AWS services that's gonna be launched sometime this summer. So you're gonna be very happy.
By someone we know?
Yes, me.
Yeah, the other thing about that you're just talking about, just limits on VPC endpoints. There are definitely default limits. I think the default is 20, but you can. It's a soft limit that you can adjust. I think to 255. I think that's the top end of what you're allowed to do on those. So if you do end up using more than 20 in a large enterprise, like an example, you can dial that up by just opening a ticket and asking them to boost your quota on those.
Cool. Jonathan, you were raising your hand earlier. Did your question get answered or?
Oh, no, I just wanted to say the gateway endpoint through S3. We were very worried about the cost getting nasty grams from finance and
Yeah.
using the S3 gateway endpoint, drop that out quite nicely.
Cool. All right. We got another 5-10 minutes here. Any more questions? I have a question for you, Matt. I know you were looking, or you're doing a lot with Argo CD, and it sounds like it's one of your blueprints now that you're distributing for customers. I know you were inspired at first by some of the things we were doing, which was, segmenting some things with Terraform, some things in Argo CD. Then you decided to try to go all in on Argo CD and kind of hated that for various reasons, because you still depend on lots of things, resources, maybe in AWS, and then passing those values between them gets messy. So I think you were, last we spoke, you were gravitating somewhere in between. I wanted to figure out where you ended up. And did you also give ACK a chance? And if so, how did that go?
Have never given ACK a chance. We have a cross-plane blog post though will be coming out in the next month or so. One new website and blog actually launches, which should be in the next week. But to the Argo decision, yeah, that where does Argo take over? Where does Terraform leave off? We still have our opinions. I don't think we've tested it out enough. I don't think I still. And I know my team doesn't have a strong opinion on it. I feel like I end up being the one that's, bringing up this conversation. I don't know. I think I sadly need more time to actually see it in work and talk with application engineers who are using it. Because I think, you get into it's kind of a similar problem to what we run into when you're trying to run Terraform at scale. You're trying to have many root modules, components, whatever you want to call them, and you have this idea of sharing data. And the same thing happens with Argo when you want Argo to manage everything in its own cluster, and those things depend on data that is outside the cluster that it needs to kind of be pushed in. With Terraform, you're kind of tightly coupling what's getting deployed, and then how that then gets into Argo, and then you're not really doing GitOps. It's this weird mix of both. So I don't know. I've been viewing it from this purist perspective. I see both, and I still am on the fence. I sadly don't have a strong answer in one way or the other, but I want to figure that out over the coming year. It's definitely an issue that I, still feel like I grapple with. Yeah.
And on the cross-plane thing, I thought you were maybe pausing on that, but it sounds like you found a renewed interest.
No. Our crossplane post is really about why we're not using crossplane, why we wanted to put it down, and why we're not interested. And not to hit on that team or what Upbound is doing there. I think that they have a use case, and I think it's just more it's more enterprise, at least mid-market. It doesn't really work for startups where we want to do everything with one tool. That was kind of the vision that I had going into crossplane, and crossplane can't really fulfill that without involving Terraform, sadly. And there's just a lot of shortcomings. So it is a common result of crossplane trials, which I've sadly found out after the fact of doing our own long dig into it. Anyway, I'll share the blog post when it comes out.
Definitely. Maybe we can do part of office hours on it after you post it.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. It's a little bit late her time. One of my team members who did all our work there, Veronica. I mean, we have an open source proof of concept of it, and we quickly ran into things that we were just like, ooh, this feels rough. I wouldn't want to do this day to day. But yeah, we could talk about it. Be happy to.
Yeah, post the blog post in the office hours channel when you have it up.
Cool. We'll do.
All right. Final call for questions. Got another 5 minutes. All right.
I will say I just had a conversation. Speaking of crossplane, I just had a conversation with, an old engineer that I used to work with that, I was like interviewing, and he was telling me he's in GCP world right now. He's been big in AWS in the past. And I was telling him a little bit about our crossplane stuff, and he was telling me about Anthos. So on GCP world, they have their own, infrastructure as code language that is like crossplane, but purely for GCP, and it's called Anthos. And I had heard about it a little bit, but he was the first person that had, put a lot of time into it, that I, actually got to ask some questions, and he was ragging on it. So I think that, the idea is kind of is beautiful, but I think that there's at least it sounds to me like the execution that he saw there wasn't that solid. I think one of the things he brought up as like a big issue was kind of connecting things, like getting outputs out of your Anthos manifests and actually being able to use that somewhere. Sounded like that was a struggle. And he also was running some Anthos stuff and was looking at the logs, and he found that they're running Terraform under the hood, and he was like pretty upset by that. And I don't know if that's the case for all of what Anthos is doing. I can't imagine it is, but he basically was sharing that there was this like whoa moment of like, why is there Terraform logs in my Anthos operator, and why would this happen? But super interesting. I think it's fascinating that they're trying to go that route of what ACK is doing, but that's their main infrastructure as code tool, other than Terraform, because they're big supporters of Terraform too, but they're trying to create that vendor lock-in, which everybody loves.
Yeah, Vlad posts something that I agree with. Just as a practitioner, I would say like the Holy Grail is not needing to worry about this, but I can't imagine a world where that exists. So what Vlad is posting in the Zoom chat is, disagreeing on the idea of being good. A continuous reconciliation loop for infrastructure is not great. You want to know when something changed and why, and not just we'll run apply again. In a perfect world, yeah, you want just auto fix, auto remediate everything. But how does the system know that that's actually what you want under those circumstances, and when the fallout of it making the wrong move is so catastrophic? So
I love this conversation. We should totally save it for the next time, because I really want that perfect world. I really do. And I think that there could be a mix where, and this is why we looked into crossplane. This is, we're looking into TF controller, that feels like the perfect world to me. And I think that I could talk about it for a while. And I think that it's, hey, if you have continuous deployment for infrastructure within dev and stage, and you're sussing out your issues early on, then you can maybe get to that point where you can at least enable some resources, maybe not your RDS database, for example, but some resources that can be auto applied in a continuous reconciliation loop. And I think that I want to believe that it's possible. And there's some bets that we're making internally at Masterpoint, at least, that we want to move in that direction, because we feel like, hey, we're just checking these plans, and a lot of the time you just approve, and it's just how often do we need to do this? Can we not feel confident enough at a certain point? And we might be naive. So, it'll be a good conversation to talk more about that maybe in a year. But anyway.
Awesome. Well, that brings us to the end of the hour, folks. Let's wrap up here. We'll see you again next week, same time, same place. We'll be posting a recording of this session to our YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/cloudposse. I thought this was a really interesting one, so probably a good one to share with your team if you got something out of it. To connect with me, go to linkedin.com/in/Osterman. You can always book a meeting with me directly going to cloudposse.com/quiz. Answer a few quick questions and we'll figure out if we can move the needle for you at your organization. To register for these office hours sessions, go to cloudposse.com/office-hours. Again, that's cloudposse.com office hours. We have a newsletter. You can register for those at newsletter.cloudposse.com. Those go out on a weekly basis when I remember to hit send. And it includes all the interesting links that we share here in office hours and some more that come up through our Slack community. So Slack community is at slack.cloudposse.com. Free for anyone to join. See you there. Talk to you all next week. Adios.